So, Naruto's Japanese voice actress just dropped an absolutely massive piece of information for all the Boruto fans waiting in the wings for its grand return. So, for those of you who don't know, there's a con that takes place pretty much all throughout America known as NostalgiaCon. And over this last weekend, NostalgiaCon Texas happened, down in Dallas or Houston or one of those cities. Every city in Texas not named Austin is just a concrete hellscape, and Austin's actually beelining its way towards being a concrete hellscape as we speak. Anyways, at NostalgiaCon Texas, they were somehow, someway not only able to book the Japanese voice actress of Naruto, Junko Takeuchi, but also the English voice actress of Naruto, Male Flanagan, also known as Principal Perry. Now, this is impressive when you consider the fact that Anime NYC, one of the biggest anime conventions in all of America, happened on that same weekend, last weekend, August 22nd to the 24th. But who knows, maybe Anime NYC didn't want the Narutos there, which is absurd. But NostalgiaCon decided to put both of the Narutos on stage together for what appeared to be about a half-hour-long panel. Now, the panel itself was incredibly simple. It was just Junko and Male Flanagan sitting next to each other chatting for 24 minutes. Male Flanagan talked to the crowd, answered a couple of questions, asked Junko a couple of questions, Junko's translator asked Junko those questions again. If you've ever been to an anime convention, it was about as low effort and as standard as a panel could possibly be. But about halfway through this 24-minute panel, Male asked Junko a question that I don't believe she was supposed to. Because about 12 minutes into their casual conversation about all things Naruto, the character, not the universe, well, I guess the universe a little bit as well, Male Flanagan asked Junko, "Have you recorded the voice lines for part 2 of Boruto yet?" To which Junko apprehensively responded with yes. Now, this is insane and massively shortens the timeline on how long we believed it was going to be until Boruto's anime returned. But when is Boruto's anime going to come back? What arc is it going to cover? And how is it going to look? All of these are questions we can answer with just this one tidbit of information. And they're all questions that I'm very excited to answer because today we're talking Naruto's voice actress just dropped massive Boruto news. But before we get to talking any news, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional NC Hammer 23 video a week, guys, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. We are still actually in the Forest of Death. It's longer than I thought it was. Before we go any further with that, today I gotta talk to you about a brand new sponsor to the page, Current. Banking is one of the oldest systems that humans still consistently use to this day. And for far too long, it hasn't changed at all. Which is where Current comes in. Because Current is banking that gives you more for your paycheck. See, not only does Current offer up to $750 paycheck advances once you qualify, but they also offer fee-free overdrafts to your account under $200. And if you're sick of your direct deposit taking way too long to hit your bank account, Current's got you covered as they offer 2 days early direct deposit. If you don't understand credit or don't think your credit is good enough, with their build card, you can build your credit, with the average person adding 80 plus points to their credit score in just 6 months. And with a 4% bonus on your savings and 24/7 live support, mixed with 40,000 plus fee-free ATMs and in-store cash deposits, there is so much to love with Current. So what are you waiting for? Sign up today using the link in my description or go to www.current.com/nchammer50 and sign up with code nchammer50 to get $50 and unlock tools like paycheck advance, credit building, and more. Terms and conditions apply. See current.com/legal_disclaimers for details. It's time that we bring banking into the right now with Current. See, like I said earlier, I don't think Male Flanagan was supposed to ask Junko this question. Because when Male Flanagan does ask this question to Junko, Junko's translator asks her the question in Japanese, and Junko takes a second and answers the question somewhat under her breath, giving a simple yes, at which point Male kind of doubles down, possibly sensing Junko's apprehension, as she maybe tries to reassure Junko by saying, well, we haven't recorded our voice lines for part 2 of Boruto yet. Now, all of this stemmed from a conversation that the two of them were having about how Male Flanagan didn't actually know that she was going to be the voice actor of Naruto until about a week before Shippuden came out. And therefore, I think Male was trying to tell Junko about what it was like to be an English voice actor working on primarily Japanese projects. And this actually explains why most dubs don't come out until about 2 to 3 weeks after the subs come out. Because it seems as though the English voice cast only gets their episodes about a week before they're gonna air. And you can't dub an entire 24-minute episode of anime in just 1 week. However, after Male tried to possibly comfort Junko after asking a question that she possibly wasn't supposed to, Junko lightened up a little bit and told Male that she has her work cut out for her. And that one line actually tells us a lot. See, one, it doubles down on the fact that Junko Takeuchi is done with Naruto's Japanese voice lines. And two, it pretty much confirms that when Boruto does come back, we're only getting it up until the time skip. However, I wanted to get a professional opinion from both sides of this equation. I wanted to talk to somebody who's not only dubbed animation projects in their original language, but also dubbed over Japanese projects. And thus I called one of my closest friends, and definitely my closest voice acting friend, Michaela Murphy, best known for her role as Toph in Avatar: The Last Airbender. See, Michaela not only worked on a project that was meant to be animated in English like ATLA, but has also worked on numerous anime, most notably Platinum End, the second manga from the mangaka of Death Note. And I asked her, how early is the voice acting done for a project before it comes out, when you're both A, doing voice acting work for its original language, and B, dubbing over something like Japanese? Now, rather naturally, she said it depends. And she began to let me know about the very two different processes that a voice actor has to undergo when either doing work for an animated project in its original language versus a new dubbed over language. See, apparently when a voice actor is doing work for an animated project in its original language, like Junko Takeuchi would be doing for the Japanese version of Boruto, the voice acting work happens in one of two ways, either before or after animation. Now that seems intuitive, obviously, but let me break it down for you. See, sometimes voice acting lines will just be spoken into a microphone with a script in front of their face, and the animation team will take those lines, then have to animate the characters on screen to match those lines. However, there's a lot of other times that voice actors, even while working in the original language of this animated project, won't actually be able to get their voice acted lines in until a bulk of the animation is done, because the voice actor will have to see what the character is doing, how they're moving, if they're falling, if they're fighting, if they're running in the scene, in order to match their voice to what the character is doing in the most appropriate way possible. Now, obviously, as English speakers ourselves, the perception that we have of voice acting is largely skewed by the fact that most English voice actors actually are watching the animated project that they're dubbing over while doing the dubbing. And while this isn't always the case, a fair amount of the time, voice actors who are dubbing over a Japanese project or any language project will have to try and make their voice lines match the mouth movements of the original animation. And this is usually why the English dub comes out a couple of weeks after the sub, because dub voice actors need to be able to see the finished project before they can start working on said project. However, this insight that was afforded to me by Michaela let me know that in basically any voice acting project, whether it be the original language or the dubbing, that a fair amount of the animation for the project has to be done beforehand. And therefore, if Junko is done with her lines as Hokage Naruto, who mind you plays a relatively big role in the Omnipotence arc, then a fair amount of the voice acting work and the animation should already be done for the ending of part 1 of Boruto. Though I know it's not technically part 1 anymore, it's now part 2. But still, a major character like Hokage Naruto, who plays a pivotal role in the last 12 or so chapters of part 1 of Boruto's manga, is done with her voice acting work. And therefore, Hokage Naruto's animated scenes have probably been blocked out already. And while other, more major characters, possibly like Boruto Kawaki, could still be working on their voice lines, I mean, we're not talking about a character who delivers 2 lines over the course of these 13 chapters. Outside of the versus Momoshiki arc, I would say no other arc in Boruto features Naruto more heavily than the Omnipotence arc. Whether it's him freaking out over Boruto's death, trying to plot ways with Shikamaru to get Momoshiki out of Boruto, or him being trapped in the Daikokuten by Ishiki, Naruto plays a very, very prominent role in the ending of part 1 of Boruto's manga. Unless Junko Takeuchi wasn't lying when she told Mail Flanagan that she's got a lot of work cut out for her, as these next 12 episodes that are going to drop from Boruto heavily feature their character, Naruto. But why am I only talking about the Omnipotence arc, these 12 episodes that I believe are going to drop fairly soon? Well, because, like it or not, there's only 73 manga canon episodes in the 293 episode run of Boruto's anime. And those 73 manga canon episodes cover about 66 or 67 manga chapters, meaning that your standard manga canon episode of Boruto covers about 1 chapter of manga. And as there is only about 13 or 14 chapters left until the time skip, which happens at chapter 80 of part 1 of Boruto's manga, it seems incredibly likely to me that when Boruto does come back, as soon as in the next couple of months, more on that in a second, they'll drop 12 episodes to wrap up part 1 of Boruto, as there's only 13 or 14 chapters left of part 1 of Boruto to be adapted into anime. And it's not even just that the numbers here are convenient. About a year and a half ago, the president of Studio Pierrot came out in an interview and said that Studio Pierrot's anime that are on hiatus, that being Black Clover and Boruto, would most likely come back in a seasonal capacity because of the monstrous success of TYBW's seasonal return. So not only does Boruto's return coming back in the way of a 12 episode arc to finish out part 1 of the manga make a lot of sense from a a numbers perspective, but also the president of the company responsible for animating Boruto basically told us that's what's gonna happen. Also, Boruto gets thrown into the Daikoku-ten in chapter 79, so there are no voice lines for Naruto post-time skip. So it wouldn't make any sense for Junko Takeuchi to tell Mail Flanagan that she has a lot of work cut out for her when Naruto post-chapter 79 basically only does. So with all of that knowledge crammed into our head, when could we see Boruto return? Well, a lot sooner than even I, who is probably the most optimistic person on the internet about Boruto's anime return, anticipated. See, Michaela told me that when she was doing voice acting work for ATLA as Top, that her and the rest of the crew, Dante Bosco, Gray, all of them, be invited into their voice acting studios to start recording their lines just a few months before the episodes were set to come out. Now, she can remember exact specifics here on account of the fact that she was like 11 when she was Toph, but she believed that she recorded her voice acting lines only a couple of months before season 2 of ATLA came out, which is when Toph was introduced into the story. Now that's interesting, because if Junko Takeuchi is actually done with her lines as Hokage Naruto, and Japan works on an even somewhat similar timeline as ATLA did back in the early 2000s, which we have no real reason to believe that they don't, then that would seem to imply that Boruto's anime could make a return in the next couple of months. But Nick, didn't Mail Flanagan say that she hasn't even been contacted about recording for part 2 of Boruto? Yes, and yeah, she did say that. However, Michaela also let me know that when she was working on Platinum End, she was only recording those voice lines a couple of weeks before her episodes were meant to come out, because they A, either needed to mouth match the already finished animation project, or B, because fundamentally the dubbing over of these projects is sometimes an afterthought to the animation studios. See, because, well, yes, simuldubbing has gotten massively more popular over the years. Mega weekly release shonen like Black Clover, Naruto, Boruto, One Piece, Bleach, all those have never even sniffed at the idea of using simuldubbing. And even though Boruto is most likely going to come back in a seasonal capacity, it seems those Studio Period's feelings on simuldubbing haven't really changed. With that being said, we are still at least months away from the release of Boruto. And as dubbing over in additional languages is usually something that happens substantially later on in the process because those lines aren't used to inform how the show should be animated, there is a possibility that Boruto could come out simuldubbed. So what does all of this mean for the return of Boruto as an anime? A couple of weeks ago, if not a couple of months ago, when Studio Period announced that Boruto's second part was in production, we estimated that it would take somewhere between 15 and 18 months to see the final product brought to fruition, as this is the conventionally accepted amount of time that it takes to animate about 12 episodes of content. And thus we assumed that we truly wouldn't see Boruto making its heroic return until early 2027, maybe late 2026. However, the mistake that we were making there apparently was assuming that Studio Period was making that announcement the second they started with the production of part 2 of Boruto. Now, there was no way for us to know exactly how far into the production of Boruto's second part Studio Period was, based off the fact that that announcement was made at least a month ago, and that Junko Takeuchi is now done with her voice lines. It seems somewhat safe to assume that Boruto could make its anime return back as soon as the winter 2026 season. I mean, it is currently, right now, as of the filming of this video, August 27th. This will go out on the 28th. The winter 2026 season doesn't usually start until about January 6th, which means that essentially I'm estimating that Boruto could be out in the next 3 months. Now, that is probably the most optimistic timeline that I could provide, as there's absolutely no way that it's coming out in something like fall 2025. I think we're already over the halfway point of the summer 2025 season. But based off my conversation with a voice actor who's worked in original language animation, if we do truly believe that voice acting lines are done only a couple of months before the episodes themselves actually drop, then winter 2026 would make the most sense as the season that Boruto's return is going to come up in. However, if we maybe wanted to play a more realistic game, I guess we could say that Boruto's going to make its heroic return in the spring 2026 season. However, in either of these scenarios, Boruto is coming back way sooner than we originally anticipated. As prior to this announcement by Junko that she's done with her lines, our optimistic estimate for Boruto's return was fall 2026, and thus our optimism has now been bumped up by 9 whole months. And while it's probably knowing how Studio Period has handled Boruto and Black Clover just opened up a door wide open in our chest to allow our heart to get stabbed multiple times every time a season passes and Boruto doesn't get announced to be coming out anytime soon, I choose to hope. It's what Naruto would have wanted. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. What do you think's happening in the Boruto camp? Do you believe that Naruto's voice actors being done with the voice lines means we're going to see Boruto sooner than we originally anticipated? Or do you think they maybe just do things differently in Japan? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, I could have emailed Bryce Papenbrook. I have his email. I just didn't think he would respond.